Hey everyone, welcome. So today we are rebuilding Tinder's swipe gesture using SwiftUI. So this is what the final product looks like. We've got cards and you can pan the cards to the left or to the right. And you can see every time the card reaches a certain X position, we've got this banner at the top. So either a like or a nope. You can obviously swipe through the cards, just navigate through the cards. That works perfectly fine. And then, yeah, so that's pretty simple. Let's just see how that's done. So the first thing we need to do is to create a project, a new Xcode project. So for this case, I'll just call it Tinder. And just make sure you select your team if you have one, or just keep it none. Bundle ID, pretty much anything. It could be your company name, your email. Make sure you select SwiftUI, and the lifecycle has to be SwiftUI app. And we won't be including any tests, so you can just skip that. Okay, great. How do we start this? So the first thing I want to do is walk you through the design and sort of explain how we would structure the view. I might need to run the old version first so we can see the cards. Okay, so essentially the view is very basic. All we really have is a V stack, right? So the V stack here. And now in the V stack, we've got an H stack. We've got a top stack, we've got an image, and then we've got a bottom stack. Okay, great. So the first thing we want to do is to actually import the assets that were provided for the project. You can find them on my GitHub accounts. So we do want to import the card model. Just import it and paste it over here. Make sure you add it to the target. And then we might need to import the assets. So let me just drag it inside the project. And there we go. We do have it. Perfect. Okay, so before we start building, let me just quickly walk you through the card model. So the card model has an ID, hence conforms to identifiable. It has a name, image name, age, bio. The card model also has an X position, Y position, and degree in order to get the rotation angle. And we also do have a static dummy data for the cards. Okay, great. So now how do we start this? Okay, so we have the V stack, which contains the H stack, the image, and another H stack. So let me just put some comments over here. Okay, so we can start working with the top stack. We can see that, again, it is a horizontal stack, and it just has 3 buttons with spacing in between. Okay, we can't really see much, so I would say for now, let's just replace the image by some random rectangle. Okay. One more issue we have, we can see that the icon, the Tinder icon is a bit too big, so let's just resize it. Okay, so that looks a bit better. Just like I said, the next thing we need to do is just add some spacing between the buttons. Okay, so it looks pretty great. I just added some spacers between the buttons and I added some padding, some horizontal padding, so to the left and to the right of the H stack. Now, this is pretty much it for the top stack. So one good thing to do is just to fold it. So over here is very similar to the top stack, but we do not need any spacing. So we just pretty much do the same thing. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the bottom stack, but we can see there is a little issue over here. The buttons are a bit too close to the edges, and that's because by default, H stacks do have some spacing. So all we need to do is just override the property by saying spacing is 0. So yeah, we are pretty much done with the top stack and the bottom stack. We can probably fold this. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to, let's say, replace all of this by a Z stack. So I can just go over here, embed in a V stack, then change the V stack to Z stack. And I can just put the image back, I suppose. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's just try to see how we would approach this. So we've got an image, then we've got a linear gradient, then we've got a V stack for the text. So let's just write that down. Okay, so what I pretty much did was just to create a drawing constant over here for the card gradient, which is going to go from transparent and black with a 50% opacity. And I just added that in front of the image. So let's try to understand how the labels at the bottom are being rendered. So you can see this is obviously a V stack because the labels are stacked on top of each other. But also you can see that these two labels are adjacent to each other. So it seems like it's an H stack inside of a V stack, right? And we need to have some space here because otherwise the text would be at the very top. So we might need to put all of that in a V stack as well, but then add some spacing. Okay, so now we need to align the content of the Z stack to be leading. So that's quite simple. Just change the alignment as well. Okay, looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay, so this is starting to get a bit more involved. So I think this is the perfect time to encapsulate all of this and then extract this into a subview. This is going to be called card view. Okay, and I probably need to transfer this from here all the way to here. Okay, so let's just add some final styling to the card. So we need some padding. That's a bit too much. Let's just change it to perhaps 8. And if we go to the card, to the Z stack, we might want to add some corner radius. Corner radius. Let's say 8. And that looks pretty good. I think we can actually play the preview to see what it looks like. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. We are pretty much there. Obviously, we need to make it interactive and sort of have many cards stacked on each other, on top of each other. Now, to do this is quite simple. So all we need to do is to have sort of a loop and then store the cards in the Z stack because we want to have the cards stacked on top of each other. So you can just embed it in a V stack and then just change V to Z. And what you want to do here is just let's say repeat. So repeat it 5 times, for example. We can't really see anything here because, well, the cards are behind, but you just can't see it. We actually don't want to have 5 cards because we actually just want to render the dummy data that we have, which is over here. You can see the data. This is what we have. So all we need to do is just go to the for each loop and then replace it by card dot data. And then here, let's just call it card to make it a bit more explicit. Now we do want to pass the card data into the card and render it because username and hello world and 23 doesn't really mean anything in this scenario. So let's just go over here and say, okay, we do expect a card, type card, and we want to use the card image instead. So okay, so the little error we have here is because the card age is of type integer, but we are passing it in a text which needs to be a string. So all you need to do is just cast it into a string. And there you go. Great. Now we've got another issue. We need to pass in the card. So all we have to do is just pass the card. And I think we are good to resume the preview. And this should probably change into the actual username. And there you go. Oh yeah, we also need to change the bio to card.bio. Great. This looks pretty good. Now there is one more thing that you might have realized is that because in the Z stack the cards are stacked on top of each other, so you first of all add this, then you put this on top, and this on top, and so on. So if you really want to maintain the order, all you have to do is just say reverse, just reverse everything. I think it's probably reversed. There you go. It's better. Okay, so implementing the Tinder swipe gesture in SwiftUI is actually surprisingly simple and just boils down to a few steps. So what we need to do is to actually just get this view, the Z stack, to read the X position, the Y position, and the angle of the card from the model, right? And then the next thing we need to do is just apply a gesture recognizer, a drag gesture. And every time the user drags the view, like so, the values of the card, that is the X value, the Y value, and the degree value, is being set to the value of the translation. Okay, so the first step is for the Z stack to follow the coordinates of the card model. So let's just do that. Okay, so finally, all we need to do is to update the coordinate values of the card model. And we know that the Z stack is going to read that and conform to it. And this is going to be done using the drag gesture, which is very simple to implement in SwiftUI as well. Okay, so like I said before, whenever the value changes or the user is dragging the view, so user is dragging the view, what do we want to do? So what we want to do is to actually, like I said before, update the values of the model. Okay, so we do have a little problem over here. We can see that the card is a constant, so all we need to do is update that and change it to a var. But that would lead to another problem. Structs are immutable. So all we need to do is just add the state over here, and we should be good. Okay, so yeah, every time the user is dragging the view with some animation, we do update the card's X and Y values and the degree as well. So let's just try to see if we can run it and maybe try it. Okay, so let's try the live preview to see what it actually looks like so far. Okay, it seems to look pretty good. You can see that we're able to swipe it left and right. But the only problem we have is that whenever you stop swiping, it just stays there. It just stays stuck. So let's talk about what needs to happen whenever the user stops dragging the card. So if the user reaches a certain threshold, we want the card to disappear. Otherwise, we want the card to snap back in its original position. And that goes for both sides, right? So for that, all we need to do is to sort of have a switch statement and try to explore all the cases. And we do want to do that with animation as well. So just say, Okay, so this seems quite complex, but it is very simple. So let me just go through every single line and explain what's going on. You can see that for the dragon state, we use a default animation, but over here we decided to go for interpolating spring. And this is because whenever the user releases the card, we want some sort of, bouncing effect to happen. It's quite subtle, but if you pay attention, you can actually see it, right? And for the parameters, I just played around with it. Feel free to experiment, try different things, make it more bouncy if you want to. Now, below this, on the switch statement, we are trying to decide what to do once the user releases the card. So we are reading the value translation width of the drag, and if the value is between 0 to 100, right? We really want the card to snap back to its original position. And we make sure to animate that, right? Because it hasn't passed the threshold. Otherwise, if the X value is greater than 100, we do want to move the card away. And we do that by changing the card's X position to be completely out of the bounds of the screen, right? And the same applies for when you swipe right. So we just do the same thing, we just reverse it. So between negative 100 to negative 1, we want to snap the card back to its original position. Otherwise, we do want to do the same thing, but just reversed, right? That's pretty much what's going on. So this looks pretty good. It looks like we're pretty much done. There isn't much else to do. The last thing we need to do here is to actually have the label. So all we need to have is these cards over here, or these views, the like and the nope. And again, this is very easy. So let me just fold everything else to make it a bit more readable. Great. Okay, so again, we've got the image, we've got the gradient, we've got the stack for the labels. Now we just need to add another stack for the cards, or whatever you want to call that. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but we do want this to be at the top. And we can see that on Z stack, we just have the alignment to leading. So just change it to top leading, and that should solve the problem. Perfect. Now let's just try to play around and see what it looks like. Okay, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good, but we don't want them to show all the time. We do want them to show based on the drag value. So let's just fix that. Okay, so what's happening here is we want the opacity of the banners to be equal to the X value of the card. So if the X value of the card is positive, right? It's positive, so this way, that means that we are liking it, so we want to show this, right? Otherwise, if it's negative, then we do want to show the nope banner. You can see that there is a little problem, because whenever you release the card, we've got this funny effect going on. To solve this issue, we might have to add some offset and reduce the value. So this should be a bit better. So let's try it again. See, now it works pretty well. Okay, so let's try to run this on the simulator and make sure that everything works fine. Okay, so it looks pretty good. If we actually release the card, it goes back to position and all of that. There is one more issue over here, and this is when the card is on the bottom stack. You can probably see that the card goes behind the stack, and that's not what we want. And there is a nice and easy fix for this. All we really have to do is just to go to the very top over here on the Z stack and just say we want the Z index to be equal to 1. Okay, let's try it again. And there you go. That's perfect. Yeah, you can see everything works just fine. The buttons work. Swiping gesture is done. And yeah. So I think that's it for the first video. Hopefully it wasn't too hard to follow. I'm actively going to seek to improve. Thanks so much for watching, and peace.